Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the conference. Hopefully, you're all well fed. It's always a challenge to be the first session after lunch, where the panelists are competing for mind share with the food you've just eaten. But I guess that's why they scheduled a session on the art of persuasion, because I have with me four stellar people, probably very well qualified to talk about and tell us about how to persuade people. So I'll just take a minute literally to set up the session around communication. I think as has been mentioned all through the morning, these days you can't not start a session on communication with digital. There is a lot of data out there around penetrations and how mobile penetrations are now significantly in excess of TV penetrations in the country. Coupled with that, there is a lot of buzz around, the whole focus around two-way communication. You can't just tell the consumer, you've got to engage the consumer in a dialogue. And yet, as was mentioned by some of the panelists in the morning, I think there is this issue of, how much of digital is really smoke and mirrors, and how do you make sense of it? So I think that's one question or one issue I think the panelists will grapple with during this session. Second, I think linked to that is this whole notion of the relevance of brands, in this hyper-connected age, especially when you're trying to sell to millennials, and how do you really create iconic brands in this age. I think Suresh in the morning mentioned that actually brands have been around for many, many years, maybe centuries, and how do you continue on that track in this age, especially, as I said, selling into these millennials. So I think that will be the other topic we'll pick up. The third, I think, now somewhat called a legacy is really the traditional marketing. I think, when you go to mass TV advertising, what is working, I think this whole notion of what is the effectiveness of that and, how can you make it even better? I think those questions, as many of us have seen, have remained virtually the same over the last 15, 20 years. So I think, again, there'll be some thoughts from the panelists on that area. And I think finally pulling all of this together really is that, as you go forward, what are now the rules, golden rules of marketing going forward, taking, what we've learned over the last decade or so, merging into that the whole digital piece and saying, how does marketing really evolve or communication really evolve going forward? So I think that's really what the three or four things that hopefully, we will discuss during the session. I've got an absolutely stellar panel to help us do that. I'm going to request each of the panelists to sort of say a few opening remarks, and then, we'll have a few questions amongst the panels, and then, we'll open it up to the floor. So if that's okay, I'll start with, again, in no particular order, but to my left, Tina Mistry. She works with Abbott. She's the marketing director there. So Tina, it'll be great to hear what you have to say.